Hello, good morning or good afternoon from wherever you're tuning in from today, and welcome. If you're joining us live, thank you for making the time, and if you're catching up on demand, welcome as well. It's great to have you with us for another automotive logistics live stream. Today, we're exploring the digital supply chain beyond AI and what lies behind the scenes for the automotive logistics and supply chain community to truly leverage AI as a tool. So just before we actually came onto the live stream, I had a call with our panelists backstage, and they said something which I think is very worth quoting up front is, don't get caught in the AI bubble because bubbles always get popped. And I really don't share that to diminish AI's potential in any way, but more as an analogy to keep in mind as we approach today's conversations around AI. There's certainly excitement, noise, and big promises when it comes to AI tools, but what lies beyond the tool is an operational reality that is daily discipline of staying grounded in the data you trust, grounded in the business reality you operate in, and grounded in what it actually takes to implement AI safely and profitably into the logistics and supply chain. Before we dive in, just a big thank you to our sponsor, Loftware, for supporting today's live stream and helping us bring these conversations to life. Loftware works with organizations to make sure that the right data is flowing to the right place at the right time, from the factory floor all the way to the warehouse and beyond. And as we'll be exploring in our conversations today, getting those fundamentals right is ultimately what determines whether advanced technologies like AI can deliver measurable value without adding risk or any unnecessary complexity. So it is really especially fitting to have them backing today's conversation. And for anyone who hasn't yet met me, I'm Emily Uwemedimo, the managing editor of Automotive Logistics. My role means I have the pleasure of spending a lot of time with you, the community, through our research calls, our roundtables, and our events and live streams just like this, hearing what's real in logistics and supply chain. And right now, AI is at the center of so many of our conversations. So what's really striking to me right now is definitely that tension. On the one side, the pace of AI capability as a tool is moving incredibly fast, and on the other side, the pace of AI literacy, which is the real understanding of AI use inside an organization, is moving a little bit more slowly. So today is more about bridging that gap, bringing the capabilities of the tool together with the discipline it takes to use AI as a collaborative and collective intelligence tool. And to help us do that, we're kicking off with a panel discussion featuring two industry voices: John Rich, Director of AI Transformation at Mazda North America Operations, and Paul Harris, Director of Solutions Consulting at Loftware. The discussion with John and Paul is interactive, so please do send us your questions at any point throughout the conversation today, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. And then after the panel, we'll close with a short wrap-up from myself. I'll share some of the wider conversations I've been having across the industry, spotlighting them through some of our recent coverage, including, how other OEMs and suppliers are approaching AI at scale, how they're putting governance around it, and what human plus machine really looks like in practice for them. But to John and Paul, welcome to the live stream. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really good to have you. I know you're in different time zones. Paul, you're with us here in the UK, and John, very bright and early for you in California. So I appreciate you being here with me. But to really kick off the conversation, John, I want to come to you first and foremost because, over the past year, you've joined us for many of our live streams and events. We've had conversations and explored the many different opinions around, where and how IA, that's kind of what you were telling me before, AI should be used in the supply chain. See, it's right here. But again, you've consistently brought it back to being, AI as a tool, and there's definitely a daily discipline behind it. So I really want to start there. What does staying grounded in AI look like in practice?
Yeah, so I think one of the important things is grounded AI it's not skeptical. You have to be disciplined. And the difference really I find is lying in whether you can know the value before you deploy an AI solution, not after. If you know the value up front and you can understand and articulate your KPIs before you deploy anything, you're not experimenting on production infrastructure, you have to define what that better looks like, whether it's your cycle time, an error rate, a cost per unit, and hold the AI that you're implementing to that standard from day one.
Perfect, thank you. And Paul, your world at Loftware is really built around, product identification and supply chain traceability. So, from that vantage point, how do you balance customers' enthusiasm for, deploying technologies like AI with that practical reality that most, successful implementations are really dependent on like a data discipline, right?
Yeah. I mean, John took the words out of my mouth almost, which is know the value before you start. I think the AI is not going to fix bad data, and if you put AI on top of bad data, all you end up with is bad AI output. And the way that I tend to frame that to customers really is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Which really is what John said. What are the KPIs you're measuring? How are you going to measure the success of this project? And are you considering what are all the inputs that you're going to need? Because clearly you're going to be using AI quite often, and we tend to see this. It's either to try and streamline, try and condense an existing process, or it's to help make better decisions. Mm-hmm. And you really have to go with that thing of saying, well, you want this to be successful. It's significant, but you've got to get the basics right first. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to end up 6, 12, 18 months down the line, and you won't have had the impact, and you won't have had that value realization that you were looking for at the outset.
Yeah, perfect. Well, kind of on that, our discussion today is really bringing together a really diverse audience. We have, logistics leaders, but also supply chain directors and also digital transformation leads and even operation executives in our audience today. So, KPIs could maybe look different for different people within the supply chain. So if we're talking about, good AI literacy, kind of what does that look like for maybe different types of people in our audience if we're talking about, making sure the KPIs are set in stone up front? So, John, maybe I'll come to you first with that question.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with literacy is not a uniform language. It really depends on the level of audience. Something that is kind of ground into you in university when you're doing any sort of public speaking or presenting anything, and this is key in business, right? Each level or audience needs a different vocabulary. There's a different threshold of understanding. Executive literacy is all about risk and accountability. It's not about the technical depth. They need to understand what can go wrong, who is responsible when it does, and what does the data governance model look like. The dangerous executive is not the one who doesn't understand transformer models or all of the technical breadth of things behind the scenes. It's the one who can't ask the hard question about model confidence.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you. John, Paul, do you have anything you kind of want to share from your side about, with our audience today?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, and John put nicely there, right? It is exec level, absolutely, that is around the risk. And I think as well, it's how does this meaningfully move the needle on the things that I'm trying to measure? If I'm an executive, how is this going to help me increase revenue? How is this going to meaningfully help me reduce costs? But even if you take that down through the different levels of the organization, it comes back to the first thing we were just starting with there, which is what's the problem you're trying to solve, and when you think about that AI literacy, if you understand fundamentally what that's doing, which is it's taking data and it's pattern matching, it's looking for similarities, it's kind of querying it and then rolling up a summary based on what's inside. And I think if you start to understand, okay, this is the output I can get, it's then coming back and looking at use cases and thinking about, well, yeah, how do I apply that? How do I offset any challenges, any risks it might introduce with the upsides of it? And all the time really making sure that you're staying grounded in that end state objective that you're looking to achieve.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Because I actually want to touch on that a little bit. John, you've made this point in our previous events as well that, generative AI isn't, and Paul, you mentioned it there, isn't actually reasoning, it's pattern matching at scale. So, that is definitely a meaningful distinction between, how you actually govern it. So how would you really define operational truth in a logistics context for our audience here? And how do you encode it so you can, the model can't talk out of reality?
Yeah, so it's really only as good as the patterns when you talk about pattern matching. So in logistics, operational truth is the authoritative time-stamped state of a physical process. It has to be encoded. It cannot be inferred as you would have with an AI. And operational truth in logistics is really at the intersection of three core data streams: what was planned, what physically happened, and when. If your data model cannot maintain those three things with precision, timestamps, your AI has no reliable surface to pattern match against. So it always goes back to data. And if I wanted to go back a little bit and talk about this, I had a point that I'd written down here. You have to be so objective when you look at these things and ask yourself, does this model or this AI solution that I'm building, does it have objectively access to clean, complete, consistently structured operational data? If the answer requires a caveat, you're not ready to deploy AI, but you are ready to invest in your data.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, because following on from that, in what kind of decision areas would you also insist having a more of a strong human in the loop checks that are probably non-negotiable in all of that? And, could you say that, is there any danger in that, the rush to scale AI within the industry right now, we're stripping away some of those critical control areas?
Yeah, I think the rush to remove human in the loop it's driven by throughput pressure, not necessarily value analysis. So the right question isn't, can we remove this checkpoint? It's, what is the expected cost of errors if we do?
Mm-hmm.
Until that analysis has been done on your production data, not your demos, the checkpoint must stay. The human has to stay there. So you have to essentially approach that with just proper process design. Again, going back to the basics of plan, do, check, act, very simplistic things here. We're not really making this more complicated. You just have to always be objective with how you're doing. Understand that AI is fundamentally a machine. It is not sentient. We are not at AGI yet. This is a non-sentient machine that you are programming to make yourself faster. It's about throughput. It's not necessarily a value analysis. So you have to do that value analysis. And if you're wanting to remove one of those checkpoints to gain higher throughput, again, it's, what is my expected cost if I remove this and something does go wrong?